So I got hit by a car when I was 23 years old. And I knew I was going to have back pain for the rest of my life, and I have. And I knew even then that I needed to take control of my body, my health. And so I did. I did as much as I could to take care of my back pain to mitigate it. I stayed on top of all of the information. I tried to do the right things, which, sometimes I needed medical help, but for the most part, it's about eating a healthy diet and doing the right exercises. And for the most part, for the past 25 years, I've managed my own back pain. But then the pandemic happened, and my diet was kind of more like coffee for breakfast, wine for dinner, and exercise was, yeah, not so much. And in February of 2022, my back went out, like the worst it's ever gone out. And for those of you who don't have back problems and don't know how it works, I will tell you, it wasn't something super dramatic. I know sometimes people ask, what did you do? Well, what I did this time was I dropped a tissue. That wasn't the problem. The problem was that I bent over to pick up the tissue. And that was it. There went my back. Extreme, horrible pain. And sometimes back pain goes away after, a couple days, but this time it didn't. It was persistent. And I didn't have a chiropractor or physical therapist or anyone I had been seeing because it was the pandemic. And so I did a post, anyone have any recommendations? And a number of people recommended the Back Center, and I looked them up, and they seemed really, they seemed real. They were medical. They weren't going to heal me with crystals or anything. Apologies to people who like that kind of thing, but it seemed like a good place to go. So I made an appointment, and I on my initial consultation with Dr. D, things went very well. He asked me all the right questions I was familiar with. He did some muscle testing and some stress tests, and it was going according to how I thought it should go. I felt very comfortable with him. And then at the end of the 10-minute consultation, he suggested that he thought it was spondylosis, which sounded about right to me. And he said that the next step would be to get an MRI to make sure that we were right in that assessment and that there wasn't anything else going on, but that immediately following it, I should get an SI block, which is, needles in your lower back to deal with the inflammation and the pain before we could start thinking about what would come after that, because we really couldn't start to heal and get better and get stronger while dealing with all of that pain. And that all sounded great. And I said, yes, let's do it. And I went out to the reception desk and we scheduled the MRI. And then the receptionist guy, he said, what time do you want to come in for your SI block? And I said, I don't know. I mean, do I need to get a ride? Do I need to fast or anything? And he said, no, there's no prep and you just show up. You don't need a ride. And I was like, great, whatever time. So we scheduled the SI block and the MRI, and I went home feeling really hopeful. And then a few days later, which was just the day before the MRI, my back pain shot up to like a 10. It was the worst pain I've ever been in. It was from my head to my toes, just on fire. I couldn't move at all. I couldn't stand still. I couldn't sit. I couldn't lay down without pain, and no amount of Tylenol or Advil was doing it for me. I was really scared, in fact, and if I didn't have that MRI already scheduled, I probably would have gone to the emergency room, but I did have it scheduled and a doctor who was going to look at it. So I went to the MRI, and as soon as it was over and they hand you that CD with your scan on it, I gave that to my husband, Bart, and I said, take this to Dr. D and tell them that I want Dr. D to look at it right away and get back to me right away, like before my SI block, which was scheduled for the next week, because I want to make sure there's nothing serious going on. And even though my husband was doing that, I know that I'm the patient, I'm the one that they want to talk to. So I also called the office and said the same thing to the receptionist. And he said, okay, Dr. D will look at it. And then a few days went by and my pain level remained at a 10 and I didn't get a call from the doctor. And now it was Friday and my SI block was going to be on Monday. And I really wanted to talk to someone before this procedure. And so I called the office again and I said the whole thing again. And they said, you know what, why don't you just call his direct line? And they gave me his direct line, which I felt very cheesy about until I called it. And it wasn't a real phone line. It just hung up immediately. And then I tried again and again, just to make sure I got the number right. And no, it didn't work. So I called the office back and they said, oh, well, we're sorry about that. Why don't you call our 24-hour emergency hotline, leave a message there. Someone will get back to you within 24 hours. And I really wanted to talk to someone. So I called them and I left a message. And no one got back to me, not within 24 hours, and certainly not over the weekend. But Monday, I had that SI block. I knew I was going to start feeling better after I got that. At least that was my hope. And I knew I was going into the doctor's office. There was no way that he couldn't, talk to me about everything when I was standing in front of him, But on Monday, I was still feeling, so horrible. I mean, I could barely turn my head without severe pain. So I had Bart drive me to the doctor's office, even though I didn't need a ride. And then he helped me get into the building, but COVID, right? So he couldn't come into the office with me. He had to stay out in the hall. And so I just sat there with no one talking to me for 45 minutes while I waited until this guy, Eric, came out and introduced himself as the physician's assistant. And he said, I'm going to take you in back now. And he helped me walk into the back. And as we were walking very slowly, it took a long time to get back there, I said, I want to talk to Dr. D before the procedure. I want to make sure that I get to talk to him because I have some questions. And Eric said, yeah, you're going to see the doctor soon. And then he led me into what was very clearly an operating room. And when we stepped in there, I said, but I want to see Dr. D. I want to talk to Dr. D before he does anything. And Eric said, yeah, you'll talk to Dr. D, but I need to get these x-rays. So I was like, okay, that makes sense. It makes sense that they're going to look at x-rays before they come talk to me. So I agreed to lay on the table, the operating table, on my belly, and Eric pulled down my pants and pulled up my shirt. And then he stepped away for like a minute and then he came back and he's like, okay, Dr. D will be in a minute. Don't go anywhere, which is funny for two reasons. One, because apparently he had taken the x-rays, and ladies, he didn't ask if I was pregnant. I mean, I know that question's annoying, but he took x-rays of my abdomen and didn't, anyway. And then two, I could barely walk. Like I could take steps that were like 1 inch by 1 inch. And and he was like, don't leave. And I was laying like 3 feet off the ground on this metal table. There was no way I could get off of that table. So he left me there. I had no phone. My pants are down. My shirt's up. I'm in extreme pain. And I'm just waiting for the doctor. I guess I'm going to have this conversation with the doctor from my belly. So like 15 minutes go by. And Dr. D walks in, and I know this because he says, hey, how you doing? And I recognized his voice. And I said, well, not very good. I wanted to talk to you and see if you got the MRI and what you thought of it. Did you have a chance to look at the MRI? And he said, well, yes, that's why you're here. And I thought maybe he would expand on that, but he didn't. Instead, he started wiping down my back with like antiseptic wipes. And then I realized like I needed to have the conversation now in this position. So I said, well, I've been in a lot of pain, like extreme pain, and I've been kind of scared and worried about what was going on. And he said, yeah, and we're going to take care of that pain for you right now. Now you're going to feel a little pinch. And then he started the needles in my back. And that was my conversation with him. And listen, I was in so much pain that the needles didn't hurt that much more, but they still stung. So I started crying and then I'm trying to process what's happening and I'm trying to push through the pain and just get the words out. So I said, I just want to make sure that we're going to talk before I leave. Like I'm going to get to talk to you before I leave. And he said, yeah, okay. And then he kept giving me the needles and then he kind of was finishing up, right? He started putting Band-Aids on my back. And I said, Okay, to be clear, I just want to make sure before I leave here today that we are going to talk and that I am going to know what is happening and what's next. And he said, yeah, you will definitely know what's next, and just stay there, don't move. Eric will be in a minute. And then he walked out and left me laying on my belly alone in this room with my pants pulled down and my shirt pulled up. And and like 10 minutes later, Eric walked in. And he walked up to me and he said, "Now, do you feel any numbness or tingling?" And I didn't. So I said, "No." And then he said, "Okay, you can sit up now." And he helped me sit up. And then I'm sitting there and he says, "Okay, don't exercise or see a chiropractor for a week. No swimming or bathing for 3 days. Do you understand?" And yeah, I understood that. So I said yes. And he said, "Okay, we can go now." And he started walking me out. And I was thinking like he was going to walk me to Dr. D's office. And then at some point, someone was going to give me one of those sheets of paper with like, "You've just had a procedure. Here's what to know." But he just walked me up to the receptionist, like the, inside part of the receptionist desk, and then walked away, leaving me there. And I was staring at the receptionist and he said, "Your next appointment is in 6 weeks. Do you care what time of day it is?" And I was still trying to process the 6 weeks thing. So I said, "What time of day?" No. And he said, "Great." And then he like wrote something down and then he handed me an appointment card. And that's when I realized like this was my last chance. So I said, "No, wait, I want to talk to the doctor. I mean, I'm not going to see him for 6 weeks. 6 weeks is my next follow-up appointment. I want to talk to the doctor because I want to find out what's next." Like, and the receptionist was looking at me like, "Come on, lady, get on with it." And I said, "Because I want to find out what's next and like what my next steps are. Like, do I have to do PT?" And he said, "Oh, you want an order for PT?" And I said, "No, no, I want to know if I should do PT or anything else because I'm not going to be back for 6 weeks. So I just want to know, like, I just want to talk to the doctor." And he said, "Oh, you want to talk to the doctor?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "Okay, well, have a seat." And I just felt so relieved because finally someone understood that all I wanted to do was talk to the doctor. So then I sat there for like 10 more minutes and then Eric started walking by. And the receptionist called out to Eric, "Eric, she needs an order for PT." And I said, "No, that's not what I said. I want to talk to the doctor. I want to find out if I should do PT or what else I should do for the next 6 weeks." And Eric said, "Well, do you want me to talk to the doctor?" And I figured someone should. So I said, "Yes." So he said, "Okay, I'll be right back." So he walked away. And then he came back 5 minutes later and said, "Okay, Dr. D said that if you want to do PT, you can." I said, I, I, I wasn't asking if I can do PT. I know I can do PT. I was asking, should I? Like, what should I do? I'm apparently not coming back for this follow-up for 6 weeks, and I want to know what I should do. And Eric and the receptionist looked at each other like, "Oh, she's gone hysterical." And then Eric said, "If you think it will make you feel better, you can do PT." And if I hadn't been so much in pain, I would have grabbed the pen off the receptionist desk and stabbed both of them in that part of the neck that they taught us in self-defense kills a person really quickly. But instead, I just very, very slowly and very undramatically stood up and walked out. And as soon as the door closed behind me and that place that I knew I never wanted to go back to, I just burst into tears. Angry, humiliated, frustrated tears. And thankfully Bart was there to take me home. And he helped me make the like 15-minute, 100-yard walk to the car. And then we got in the car and we started driving home. And that is when the numbness and tingling began. And it started in my tongue. Like my tongue just went numb and I felt like I'd just come from the dentist. And then it went to my neck and my ears and all over. By the time we got home, my entire head was numb. I could still move, but I couldn't feel anything. Everything was just cold. Like I had been to the dentist and she had really bad aim with those needles. And that was kind of creepy. So I called the office because I knew I wasn't going back there, and they didn't pick up. Like I couldn't even leave a message, like they had already blocked my number or something. But I still had that 24-hour hotline number, so I called there, and I did my best to just to beg. I said, please, will you call me back? I just had this SI block, and my neck and my mouth have gone numb, and I just want to make sure that I'm not going to choke in my sleep. Like, just call me back or text me. If you don't want to call me back, text me and let me know if I should go to the emergency room. And you know, and then I waited for a while, and then I just figured, no, you know what? I'm going to Google it. And I did. And apparently the numbness and tingling after an SI block is very common and should dissipate within 24 hours. And it did. And I'm glad I Googled it because nobody called me back within 24 hours. So that the numbness went away, but the back pain did not. It was still full on worst pain ever. And it didn't go away the next day or the next day. And by like the third day, I realized it was back on me. Like I was still in the situation and I was going to have to take control and deal with it. And so I called my primary care physician, and I got an appointment with her later that day, and I went in and I told her the whole story, and she recommended a SI block. No, she did not. She recommended a steroid pack and physical therapy. And I was okay with all of that. And I started the steroids a couple days later, and within a few days I started feeling better. And I started physical therapy a week or two after that, and within a month or two I was on my way back to normal. As an epilogue, 2 weeks after my SI block, I was still in a lot of pain. I was still wearing a back brace. It was the first day of the Women's Festival, and I was getting a lot of phone calls, and I picked up the phone with a number I didn't recognize, and the woman said, "Is this Mrs. Robinson?" And I said, "Yes." And she said, "Hi, I'm calling from Dr. D's office. I understand that you're having some numbness and tingling from an SI block you had yesterday." And I said, "That was 2 weeks ago." And she said, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I understand. We're very backed up here, but Dr. D wanted me to tell you that the numbness and tingling should go away within 24 hours. And I said, "Yeah, it did 2 weeks ago." And then she said, "Okay, I understand. I'm sorry. We're very backed up here at the office, but Dr. D also wanted me to tell you that if you have any other questions or concerns, just call the office and we'll call you right back." It wasn't her fault, right? Like it wasn't her fault. And I couldn't kill her through the phone. So then she said, is there anything else I could do for you? And I remembered that I hadn't actually canceled that appointment, that follow-up appointment that I had coming up sometime in April. And that would just be the icing on the cake if I got charged for not going, right? So I said, yeah, actually, I have a follow-up appointment that you can cancel for me. So she said, okay, I'd be happy to do that. And then I heard her typing. And then she typed some more. And then she said, well, I don't see a follow-up appointment, but you do have a procedure scheduled. And I said, I do, a procedure. Wow, what procedure is it? And then I said, you know what? Never mind. I don't care. I don't care. Just go ahead and cancel it. And she said, are you sure? You know, it's really hard to schedule a procedure around here. And I said, oh yeah, I am very sure. And it felt good just to get back that little bit of power. Thank you.